Good afternoon. It's 12:30 in on continental Europe. It's still 11:30 in London, where we are with Andrew Debenham, who is it head of marketing for Europe for Essensys? Or can you
Head of sales. So I do a bit of everything, but yeah, VP of sales to really help our business expand across continental Europe. I've just done a very similar job over in the US, so they picked me up and put me into Europe now to try and do the same thing over here.
Awesome. Andrew, so as we said, you are running important department for Essensys. Essensys are the partner of Coworking Europe, one of the partners of important partner of Coworking Europe, and also you are touching with a little bit of everything regarding technology and flexible workspaces, and not since yesterday, but it has been a long journey that you have been through. First with the traditional business centers, and then co-working, not flex workspace. We know that there was this vocabulary also evolving through the years, and the purpose was to go with you through some of those technology, and also to figure out to integrate all those technology nowadays, because it's not that we just have a smart locking system and then manage the builds and everything, but as a flex workspace operator, we have to deal with more and more features and technology services or actions that are supported by tremendous new technologies. But at the end of the day, it's like a cockpit of a 747 with all those tools, and the idea was to go through that topic with you and see from yourself as an integrator what you see coming up and how you see that coming. So, and you are in London within the office, which is a great news.
It's a rare moment. It's certainly not back to normal just yet. I've called it, it's April 2021, so I think we according to the Prime Minister, we'll be sort of back to normal-ish, we hope, around about June time. We can still have meetings in the office. I've just had an internal meeting, and there are people around, as you can tell.
Oh yeah. Did you already have your pint in the pub or not yet?
No, that'll be after this call. Yeah.
Oh, okay, so, okay. I won't keep it too long. So, but maybe first let's just remind us what Essensys does and where it is.
Yeah, sure. So thank you. I mean, we're a global company. We founded the business in 2006 in the UK, in London, and really around the premise of looking at what is a very complex business model, which is flex office space. Flex office space means, as per your earlier comment, typically lots of different systems doing lots of different things. It's very hard to scale a business up, very hard to add more locations as you have more systems, etc. And that was really why we set up Essensys. We thought that there was no company at the time doing any form of software integration, single platform stuff. So in 2006, we set the business up. Since then, we've done amazingly well. We've built all our own software. We're now a public business. We're on the London Stock Exchange, and we've got customers in, I think it's 19 countries now across the world. With our own offices in London, New York, LA. We've now got presence in Paris, looking further afield to Asia Pacific as well. But what it is we actually do, I'll keep it really high level and quite simple, and I'll probably tell you a couple of things that people might not know about Essensys. It's a couple of things that we do that aren't that well known, but are very important. So the way to kind of view us is we have a product called Flex Services Platform, and Flex Services Platform is around, I tend to describe it like a bit of a pyramid. So you have at the top end, you've got the kind of occupier experience. So a really true digital mobile experience, not just within Flex Workspace, but across the building, how a user can interact with the space, book, pay, open services, and really have access to space anywhere. So that's at the very top. In the middle, you have our modular software platform, which is a tool for the landlord or the operator or the space provider, so they can handle all of their kind of general day-to-day operations around billing, reporting, infrastructure. They can handle that internally, and there's a huge amount of analytics that can be generated from that. And underneath it, which kind of leads into, very often people don't know what this is a key part to what we do, and it's absolutely unique, is the infrastructure layer. So we actually run our own global private cloud infrastructure, whereby we connect every building into our data centers. And so it means that we actually have an incredibly powerful thing, which we'll, I'm sure, talk about when it comes to integrations and digitizing the experience and digitizing buildings, because we have this underlying infrastructure layer. We can start to digitize physical things like doors, like printing, like lockers, like car park barriers, etc. Because we physically connect the building into our infrastructure layer. So that's kind of a high level of what we do. And then the other thing that people perhaps don't know about, it's a fairly new thing that we've released. We've got, you know, a big product team, tons of developers, coders. I've got no idea what they do, but they're sat behind their computers doing stuff. We also, as well as our product team, we have a thing called Essensys Labs. And Labs is all about us looking at emerging technologies, a completely separate department who aren't necessarily kind of held accountable to kind of roadmap and delivery dates. Their whole mission is to do what we're talking about now, which is what technologies are out there, what is beneficial to flex workspace and digital buildings. And, you know, COVID in particular has really thrown a spanner in the works for a lot of things. But in this context, you know, things like obviously landlords and operators are looking at air quality now. And is that a useful thing that we can look at? So that's kind of some of the stuff that we're working on. But that's at a high level who we are, what we do. And as we've said, I head up our European expansion. And part of what, as a final point, part of what we are obviously doing is the more countries we add, the more translations we do as well. So this isn't English only. This is a platform that is multilingual, both at an occupier level and an internal software level.
Maybe let's stay with this example of air quality because it's very contextual. And so is it, are we now at the level where you will connect, or we will have to connect the air quality sensors to the overall platform and be able to act on it? Or is it still something that is, yeah, we see it beeping on the radar, but it's not. It doesn't go further than that.
No, so I think it's what we've got. The luxury of what we do is quite broad. We do a lot of things for what is a very complex business around flex workspace, and that means there's lots of data points. So we have data points today which we report on and we show customers, and we can show them here and whatever, and through the software around Wi-Fi usage, analytics, bandwidth usage, what types of traffic, door access. So we start to get a few data points coming in. One of the things that the guys in our team in Essensys Labs are doing are looking at air quality. Now, is that going to be important for things like meeting room bookings? You know, if an operator or landlord or even the occupier themselves can see that the air quality is better here or worse here, is that going to influence how they book certain spaces or not? Who knows? So I don't think I've got an answer for your question just yet, but in terms of another data point, then absolutely we're looking at it. Because guess what? The whole world's looking at it at the moment. It is an important thing, and it will be, you know, a fundamental change in how we conduct business. So therefore, it's absolutely the right thing for us to be looking at. Same as sensors, you know. So there are tons of sensor companies out there. You know, which ones you pick, how do you integrate it? Again, we have a luxury of this infrastructure layer whereby we can take a kind of central controller and we can put it into our infrastructure layer, and then any building that is connected to us has access to that. So it's that infrastructure as a service layer. So and the reason why sensors are important, as well as air quality, is things like people counting. And again, a lot of that is geared around space utilization, but obviously probably in the short term, hopefully not particularly long term, some of it is around social distancing. You know, can you therefore get a census to square foot, square meters, people counting? Okay, there's too many people in the building, we need to do something differently. So I think that might be a short term, hopefully a short term need for it, and we won't need to start thinking about that too detailed in the future.
And how do you navigate through this you know, crowd of new proposals and technology startups? So we have been witnessing this rise of the PropTech scene all over the globe, and in Europe you have every country knows there's a PropTech association, and you have there a lot of different things that sometimes have nothing to do with one another at the end of the day. But
no, it's
how do you navigate
tough
there? Yeah.
So PropTech in particular is there are thousands, probably millions of PropTech companies, and to your point, they all do very individual things. And I think that, to my understanding about general economics, is that when you have a new sector, suddenly there's loads of new companies, and then there's consolidation, and then you have some major players. And I think PropTech's in that phase at the moment. Interestingly, when you look at real estate, commercial real estate, you've got the sort of landlord traditional space up here, and you have co-working down here. Now, there's niche kind of players like us who have been born out of this world, and then you've got a lot of sort of PropTech companies up here that have sold to landlords around, you know, HVAC and around air conditioning, etc. And the two worlds are slowly but surely coming together. Obviously, as the whole building has been put together. How do we find these solutions? Well, I think you've got to be open-minded. We go to, annoyingly, they're all virtual at the moment, but we do go to a lot of trade shows, and they're a great place to meet people and to find other platforms. And obviously, we have an outbound sales team and this Essensys Labs team, who their whole job is to firstly sell the products and then come back with feedback around what else we should look to integrate with, and secondly feed it back into our product team.
We have this idea of monitor room in a building that is just with security guards and just monitoring the entrance and the parking, as you mentioned. Are we going to a world where we will have I was speaking about the cockpit, but a cockpit for operating a building, as everything could become digitized, or virtual cockpit, as
I don't think we're far from that. You know, you've got to look at the user experience, the user journey. Can you digitize the entire user journey from the moment that user or that company wants to have access to the space, wants to find it? You can obviously digitize that. Can you then digitize how they pay for it? Yes. Can you then digitize, once they've paid for it, can you automate the actual contractual process and the access process and the setting up on internet and everything else? And so we can do that. I think there's always going to be a need, as far as I'm concerned, for potentially in lots of buildings for somebody to be locally on site, because, you know, that's part of the service. But in principle, yes, that's kind of where we're taking it. And it's an obvious thing, right? That's kind of where technology is taking things. I think there's one underlying thing here, though, that is really critical, which people tend to overlook. It's all well and good, you know, digitizing and integrating and everything else. What about it's not even the big occupiers so much, but typically, what about the larger corporate occupiers? Because many of those occupiers will have certain security and compliance standards. They say, well, I can't use that. I need to use this. Or I can't use your internet. I need to use my own. Or I can't. And so that becomes a hurdle. So, you know, so it's all well and good being able to integrate and create an amazing user experience. But if you don't have the underlying security credentials, resilience, there was that, you know, a great example of WeWork 2 years ago, the huge network hack, and, you know, and that's fundamental. Otherwise, you could do the best automation in the world, but maybe only half the building uses it because they're worried about the boring stuff, compliance.
And so the purpose of the discussion, the title was about digitizing the building. What haven't we digitized yet in a building? Is there areas where we are still, okay, we need good old physical service with people, with team, which might be something good at the end of the day, indeed. Or how do you see that? Your department, you say they are trend watching everything.
I think what the industry is faced with a bit of a challenge at the moment around digitization when you've got multi-use buildings. So when particularly traditional landlords, and I'm going to sound really dismissive of them, but they're typically not the most technical. They're property people, they're investment people, and typically they'd say, well, I've got a whole building here, and I've got, you know, flex office there, lease space there, I've got a gym down here, I've got a restaurant here, and I've got all this stuff. And they say, I want it all on a single app. You know, it's that kind of ultimate digital experience. And I think that they tend to overlook the complexities of doing that. So you might have a completely separate business running the yoga studio, a completely separate business running the restaurant. You probably will. And so suddenly having the ability to digitize that, it actually gets very hard because you've got different bank accounts to pay, you've got different systems to tap into. And also, I think the other thing is that it's all well and good digitizing and having, you know, the kind of single app, single pane of glass to look through to book everything. actually, in many cases, the single pane of glass is just the phone. In fact, I'm stating the obvious point here, but I think people tend to get quite wrapped up in, I've got to have a single app to do everything. But no, you can have 10 apps on your phone to do everything. How we look at digitizing space is by using near field communication stuff. So Apple Pay sort of thing, whereby you tap without having to open an app. So much of that is around access, and we tend to look at it from a physical in-building experience. So we tend to look at digitization around, look, if I turn up at the car park, I just want to use my phone as my key to open the barrier, boom, so we can do that. If I then go to the turnstile, same again, tap it and open. If I then go to, or even before the building, I've used the same mechanism. It wouldn't be through us, but to do to access the metro. So it's all that tap, 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 and that's something that we're working a lot on, and we've already delivered. Even things like printing. Printing is a pain in the arse for a lot of flex space providers around the world because of billing and network issues. Again, we can solve the network piece because we got the infrastructure, and the billing and the usability piece we're working on at the moment, which is a labs thing. Is I just want to print, and again, I don't want to use a different code. I just want my same credentials just to tap it, and so we're able to do that with that near field communication thing. So I think people kind of get there is sometimes too much digitization within a single app. Don't get caught up in that, but our stance on it is the kind of the physical journey around the building, access, car parks, printing. Where can I just tap on things, paying for stuff as well?
That's it. We are still in the wall with codes and tokens, whereas we have everything is embedded in your phone at the end of the day. That's what you say.
Yeah.
And how far are co-working operators and flexible workspace operators with implementing that, or even understanding it, from your perspective?
Well, I think there are some great tools out there, great software that has gelled together a mobile experience plus the internal software for bookings. I think at the moment much of it is quite limited to the ability to for a user to book and pay for a space and maybe open the door at the same time. That tends to be about as far as the industry has taken it. And even with that, one of the reasons why, for example, we've actually built our own access control system, not the hardware, we use globally recognized stuff, but the actual software, is because, to use an example, access control, or run the other way, Flex Workspace creates a very, very unique challenge for access control systems. And what I mean by that is a user who wants, if I was walking past this meeting room now and I just saw it was available, I wanted to book it, pay for it, and open the door at the same time, we can do that. I'm not trying to sort of sales pitch here, but actually the reason why we can do that is that this building is connected online all the time back to our infrastructure layer. So the decision to book it, pay for it, and open it at the same time is immediate. Access control systems, and there are tons of really good ones out there, they're fundamentally offline systems. So a new rule like that, if a user wants to book it and pay for it, that's a brand new rule that the access control system hasn't seen. And so what it will do is it will take 15-20 minutes for the databases to sync up. And when we saw that 2 or 3 years ago, we thought, here's an example where we probably won't integrate with a partner. We'll build our own, because actually we want the user experience to be amazing. We want it to be book, pay, open, all at the same time. So I think most of the co-working industry has definitely got, the apps are out there linking to billing and booking, but actually linking to physical infrastructure, I think is a challenge for most co-working operators.
And why so? Because of a lack of knowledge, or a lack of physical hardware provision? Because that's another thing. If you are in any country, you sometimes start with just buying the hardware and considering the software.
Well, I think there's firstly how much time and money have you got to invest in what you need to. So there's one thing buying the hardware. There's another thing actually getting your head around doing the integration. So you'll either get a software developer in or not, and maybe that will take time. And then there's a third thing, which I was just talking about, which is even when you've done the integration, actually, was that a smart thing to do? So what we recognized when we started doing integrations with, for example, access control vendors, we saw, actually the actual user experience isn't very good. So we should probably try and do it in a different way. So I think it's just time, money, cost, effort, and fundamentally, it's like I think you just had a previous session on them. You know, do landlords buy or build, or how do they run co-working or not? You know, for us, it's the same thing around tech. You know, if most co-working operators are hospitality companies, perhaps they're backed by landlords, so sort of hospitality / property. They're generally not tech. And I think also one of the reasons why not many have yet sort of solved the whole integration stuff is that, you know, flex workspace is still a young industry, and the suppliers within that are still quite young.
Sorry, so to come back on a point you raised previously about merging of the experience and industry focus, and do you see that happening as well now with flexible workspaces? Either that was indeed the panel before, integrating real estate property owners, or the service delivered by a landlord now is not about asset management anymore, or as much as it used to be, but more and more about service provision, hospitality, because occupiers are demanding a new experience themselves.
Yeah,
how
I
about
think
that for you? Yeah,
it's tricky, right? There's a lot of moving parts in that. So some landlords, the way they're built, if they're real estate investment trusts, you know, they have to create a separate operating company. So it's not as simple as just doing a new product. So there's that challenge to overcome. A lot of this comes down to building valuation, fundamentally, as you'll know. So, you know, so if the valuation's off, then occupier demand. But I think the more occupier demand that comes, the better, because it will just, being candid with you, I'm talking to the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors next week just to understand their thoughts on building valuations, because it's got to change at some point. So I think as of today, many of the smaller private landlords, because they're not REITs, we've started working with some in the US and some in kind of Europe as well, are able to just go, okay, well, I've got 10 floors of lease space, let's do 2 floors of flex. I think many of them, if they want to do a full co-working space, I think many landlords are still scared by that, so they'll partner with another co-working operator. But many of them that choose to do more of a kind of a turnkey sort of no-tell desk-AO type solution, it's not as complex in principle, because you're dealing with 1 or 2 tenants versus 30 tenants in a single building. So I think, yeah, you know, you've got examples like Heinz in the US, and you know, they chose to partner with Industrious, but that was really about learning. They just wanted to learn the ins and outs of the business model and everything else, and they still will partner with Industrious, but guess what, they'll do their own thing as well, because they own the whole building, and they're going to do the whole digital experience across the whole building, of which a section of that is flex. Interesting that they came to the conclusion that they will still go on their own for some of the, you know, the rollout of the servicification of the thing. Yeah, but I think we were talking to a large French real estate investment trust last week, and I sort of said, I think at some point every landlord will have some form of flex, whether it's this year or 10 years or 15 years. Of course, it's going to happen, and I think they'll all do it on their own. I think that's it. You think they will do it on their own? Yeah. Personally, I think so, because I look at examples where, you know, when they realize the upside, when they can get their head around the operations, and also when they understand that actually this isn't about free beer and WeWork and loads of companies. This is just about providing a bit more than core and shell, and charging, you know, double base rent, and you know, it's not as operationally complex. It's in my mind, and in your mind, it's not as operationally complex doing a sort of a single tenant kind of service space. To them, it still is, but I think the awareness that we've seen, because we've talked to a lot of landlords over the last 18 months, the awareness that we've seen has shot up. You know, they tend to be quite well educated now. And guess what? You know, the likes of WeWork have got rid of 8,000 staff. So there's a lot of people out there that would say, I'll be a consultant. I'll help you turn this around. So,
we see popping up small companies with former companies,
exactly.
employees everywhere.
Great job for them. You know, here you go. Do me a co-working brand. I've got 10 buildings. Wow, what a great job to have.
We are having at the end of the discussion, and I think we could go for a few more hours. The thing about also as Essensys is a platform, that's what you support is also kind of multi-vendor
Mhm.
system. That means that in a building you don't. We spoke about printers. We spoke about integration, PropTech providers. Is it where we can see the difference as opposed to just facility management system that are in the market as well, that you can also support and integrate outside vendors with the billing system also and
Yeah,
customize
it's
things?
the more you get into this. Again, remember I did the kind of landlord and co-working systems, and so you have BMS systems up here,
Yeah.
and then you have so they are coming together slowly but surely. So, so yeah, again, part of our labs team, that they are looking at building management systems, really trying to find the use case. Actually, what use cases are there, and how can this be great for the kind of the landlord or the flex space provider? I think in certain cases, and I don't want to sound all negative, there's always going to be it'll be fine to have a couple of different systems, because if they're so polarized anyway and they're doing completely different things, I think that's fine. But I think what it comes down to is the single data analytics that you can get, which will help you make decisions about the building. So if BMS plays into that, and if air quality plays into that, and Wi-Fi utilization and everything else plays into this, that's where it gets powerful. So I think the data and the result of the data is what will help drive companies like us to go, yes, we'll integrate with the building management system, because we can do this and we can present that, and we can show 300 people in this building, they've done this, 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 and this. And I think that's the real kind of drive behind doing a lot of integrations, is around what data can you get from it, as well as ease of use.
And it's funny because listening to what you were saying, and you mentioned the valuation. To some extent, tomorrow's real estate asset managers and all those people who have to put a price on the building according to the lease they have, the duration of the contract with an occupier, etc. With a good old Excel sheet that we know. Actually, if they are not aware of the technology level and the layers that are embedded and the level of understanding of the landlord about how to integrate all that, it can have a tremendous impact on the level of valuation at the end of the day.
Yeah, well, yeah, I think so. I think that this is the question mark. This is the big question mark. I think that obviously in terms of revenues, of course, they have a great impact, and margins, fantastic. But underlying building valuation is still a question mark at the moment. And because of that, many asset managers and landlords are still clinging on to that. Can we get some leaseholders? Just as one little story, actually, we had I won't say who it was, but about 3 or 4 weeks ago, one of my colleagues was in Paris and met with a landlord who is just about to finish construction on a building, and he's interested in flex because of occupier demand. So he did like a big kind of show and tell of the building, invited some big corporate real estate people in to come and have a look at it, and they were all very much like, look, office space, because of our needs, should be like booking a hotel. You should tell us what you've got, what services you've got, and pick and choose internet, furniture, whatever. And the landlord apparently just sort of sat there, and he went very defensive and like this, because he's still clinging on to the nope, you're going to sign a lease with me for 10 years and you're going to do it on your own. And it's undoubtedly because of the way the valuation's been set.
And all those insurance pension fund insurance company, that's all the thing.
So I think if that unsticks, then it'll just go crazy. But it'll be interesting to see how that kind of finalizes in the next couple of years.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you so much, Andrew, for sharing the insights of Essensys. And
thank you.
A lot to share.
Great.
We plan to have a range of further discussion later in the months of the year, at least. And if you want to have more information about Essensys on Coworking Europe, of course, you are listed in our partners list. And there is also your virtual booth in the Coworking Europe app for everybody aiming to get more information about Essensys services and product. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jean-Yves. Been great.
Have a good day and have a great pint.
Well, it's 1 minute past 12 now. It's lunchtime, so technically, yeah.
Okay. Take care.
Thank you. All right. See you soon.